So all that consolidation and the dominance of AppLovin has just meant that there's just very little room for innovation now on the traditional ad format side. So if you're trying to build an ad tech company, basically don't go into traditional ad formats.
What is going on in the rewarded ad space? Hello and welcome to Growth Masterminds, the podcast for growth marketers. My name is John Koetsier. We all know there's been massive growth in the rewarded or incentivized ad space. Why? Will it continue? Is it the future? And how many more companies are we going to see in this space? Today, we're talking to an Adtech OG. He's a former GM at a Liftoff company. He's a former VP at Unity Ads. He was a VP at TapJoy. And he started his career as a performance marketing manager. His name is Paul Bowen. He's currently Chief Revenue Officer at StreamElements. Welcome, Paul.
Hey, John, thanks for having me. Excited to do this podcast with you.
Super pumped to have you. It's the second time. Neither of us remembered what you talked about the first time, but I'm sure it was something smart. But we'll look back and find
I don't
out
know
what
about that. Let's see.
hopefully. I'm gonna dive in right at the top about why you're here primarily. You built a database of all the incentivized ad platforms for gaming UA, user acquisition. What possessed you to do that free work?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think first and foremost, it was myself. I think I have a lot of friends and connections within the industry, and a lot of people have been saying, look, this space is really starting to see growth recently, and I just wanted to make sense of it more than anything.
Mm-hmm.
One, because the company that I work for, StreamElements, operates within the space, but also I love to see new trends. I've been in kind of the incentivized space since I joined TapJoy in 2010, and it's nice to see it have a revival. So first and foremost, it was to make sense of it for myself, and then secondly, I wanted to offer it as a resource for everyone else to basically understand what the ecosystem looked like. There are some great resources like App Players Index, and Singular puts out a report on ad networks as well on an annual basis. They tend to cover the largest platforms, but don't cover kind of the startups and upstarts, I guess you could say. So I wanted just to fully understand who are all these companies that are being formed? What are they working on? It seems like a lot of them are working on the same problem, which we might get into. But yeah, just really wanted to make sense of the space in this kind of post-IDFA world that we're living in right now.
Exactly. And actually, it's kind of interesting that you mention it because I actually do the Singular ROI Index, which will come out early in 2025. And I'm looking at this and I'm going, is there a subset of some of the ad spend we should look at and put out a section of the ROI Index that is focused on rewarded or incentivized ad networks? But I'll share the link and I'll probably share some on screen later as well in post-production. But this list it's about 32 companies, 31 companies. It's got companies like Fiverr and TapJoy that have been around, like you say, for like a decade. Crazy,
Yep.
Insane. It's got Mistplay. It's got Fluent. AdJoy is there. Ad Action. App Samurai is there. Some of the better known ones. GameLight is there as well. Scrambly. And then there's some that I just had never heard of. Benjamin One. Never heard of it. I had heard of Ascend Media. I hadn't heard of Mode Mobile. So you actually went out, you looked at them, you found them, their website, and their reward type, gift card reward, cashback reward, those sorts of things. Very cool. I'll share that. It's a useful resource. One of the things you found is that almost everybody's going towards a gift card.
Yeah, and that was kind of my point about. So I started my mobile career at TapJoy, which kind of innovated the offer wall model for the mobile games. So that was kind of the growth sector for a while, for kind of how you would umbrella term the rewarded or incentivized space. And you had Fiverr, you had Supersonic Ads, you had TapJoy at that time, all working around virtual currency, basically offering rewards within games for basically downloading and playing apps. And that was a very popular model for a while, but I think it kind of reached a bit of a ceiling. There's a few reasons I think that kind of lead to that. One was, it wasn't a ubiquitous kind of format that every user tended to engage with. It was quite a niche format. The actual ad formats are quite engaging, and we might get into that. They require a lot of engagement on the user's behalf. And I think from a publisher point of view or game developer point of view, a lot of game developers didn't like how much was required from the user to actually engage in the ad format. So if you compare, say, an offer wall format to like a rewarded video or standard interstitial or banner, they require almost no involvement from the user, right? You basically click on them and you can get paid on a CPM. Great. Your user doesn't spend a lot of time out your game.
Yes.
And so I think that, plus Apple's clamp down on incentivized ads in 2011 basically led to a capping of that virtual currency monetization space. And then I think we've increasingly saw kind of this gift card as a reward space emerge, really with Misplay as the innovator. On Android, they still don't have an iOS product, and I think the lack of barrier to entry has meant that we've just got a ton of fast follows there, or not even fast follows. There was actually quite a big gap, I think, between Misplay and a bunch of the other companies like Benjamin, one who you mentioned, who are a more new entrant. But I think the lack of barrier to their entry and a bunch of other factors have led to the emergence of rewarded and /incentivized advertising having a renaissance after its original emergence very early on in smartphone mobile advertising in 2010.
Awesome. So I want to dive into all that stuff, some of the formats and why there's a renaissance there, what's going on, what this is getting, what is this is providing for players, what this is providing for advertisers, UA managers and stuff like that. I want to dive into all that stuff. Before we get deeper into this, I want to ask you about StreamElements. You're now with StreamElements. I mentioned off the top, you've been with Unity, you've been with TapJoy, you've been around the block, Liftoff. What is StreamElements? What do you guys do?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I'm kind of a mobile ad network OG. My last role was at Liftoff, where I kind of was over GM of a product called AudioLift, which predicted LTV. So it kind of dipped into the SaaS space a bit. But the ad network space is extremely interesting to me. You can build a very scaled business very quickly if you find the right model. And StreamElements essentially offers tools to Twitch streamers, Twitch creators, to allow them to engage with their audience. And as well as that, one of the tools that we offer is monetization for their streams. So basically we work with performance advertisers to hit their performance KPIs. So we ask these streamers to play on stream. And the model is that those streamers ask their audience to hit specific milestones within the game. For example, get to level 100, make a purchase, et cetera, et cetera. So what you have is a very similar model to kind of the incentivized or rewarded model. The players basically have an incentive to do these actions. And the live nature of Twitch especially means that it's, you're going to have this real-time feedback loop between the creator and the streamer. So we use our tools to show progression within game. And we do that after the stream as well. We have a bunch of tools that kind of show how players are progressing within the game. So we have a similar kind of traffic type, I think you could say, to the rewarded space. And so, StreamElements being kind of the rewarded space is my interest in this space, I guess. But I've been in this space my whole mobile career, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. I understand more now why you built this and some why it makes sense for you to have built this. Okay, let's talk. Let's go back to rewarded and just the space in general. You mentioned, hey, this has been around for a while, like over a decade, right? But there's been this massive resurgence, renaissance, and this explosion of companies in the space in the past 18 months, 24 months, maybe even a little longer here. Why? What's going on?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think I kind of highlighted one reason, which it's kind of the barrier to entry. It's relatively low if the type of product you're building gives gift card rewards. So I kind of talked a little bit about virtual currency as the reward, which requires you to work with third parties to implement your solution into their game to actually offer that virtual currency. So, you have to work with a bunch of publishers, persuade the product team, then the monetization manager.
Yeah.
And then you need to deliver some minimum revenue that they expect as a result of all their investment in the integration. And there's a whole world there of, TapJoy and Fiber and IronSource historically offering large incentives for publishers to implement these offer walls. And that's a real pain if you're trying to scale a business quickly. It's tough. And so with gift cards as a reward, you don't need to work with any third party on the publisher side. You can basically spin up your own product, whether it be a web product or an app, and you own the fulfillment on kind of the payouts, the reward side, which makes it a one-sided marketplace and a lot easier than building a two-sided marketplace. So, two-sided marketplace arguably have, they're a little bit more valuable, but they are harder to build, I guess you could say. So that would be the first thing. That they're just the barrier to entry for these gift card apps, like Gamelight, like Misplay, is relatively easy to cover. And so that's why a bunch of companies getting funded here. I think the other key reason is we've just seen a ton of consolidation in more traditional ad platforms. AppLovin being the dominant one here. They basically own the header bidding mediation space now. They are by far the dominant player. And every other company in the traditional ad space has basically suffered because of their success. So all that consolidation and the dominance of AppLovin has just meant that there's just very little room for innovation now on the traditional ad format side. So if you're trying to build an ad tech company, basically don't go into traditional ad formats. We went through kind of the ad network space, we went through the SSP space, we went through the DSP space, and that's all consolidated to like 5 companies now, and they're duking it out. But, AppLovin's the Goliath. Well, not the Goliath, but it's ultimately going to be the winner, I think. I don't think that will change in the short term. I think another reason is the removal of IDFA. That made being an ad network harder. That kind of pushed the consolidation of the ad platforms. That's a fuel as well. So the other impact of the removal of IDFA is owning your own data becomes more important. So actually having a full view of what the user's doing, which is what AppLovin have. They see every ad call made. So that's why they're so good at what they do. They own the mediation, they own the header bidding. And that's exactly what the rewarded apps have, these gift card reward apps. They see everything a user does, and so they can make sure that they're optimizing the user experience. And I think lastly, if I look back to 2010 and what we were doing with TapJoy, I mean, we kind of got dinged by Apple because we were basically pumping installs and pretty much nothing else at that point. Not that we knew, we didn't really know what we were doing wrong, but Apple saw it was not something they wanted in their platform. And I think increasingly, especially from the advertiser side, we see advertisers seeing real value in what these incentivized rewarded ad platforms are delivering for them. They're hitting long-term ROAS goals. Nothing's about CPI anymore in UA. It was like that 10 years ago or 15 years ago. Everyone's looking at long-term returns now and payback windows and things like that. So the innovation in how these incentivized campaigns are set up, so they're not just optimizing to install, is another key difference between how this kind of space emerged and where it is right now.
And given that point that you just made, like nobody's looking at CPI in isolation right now. Everybody's looking at long-term returns, LTV, ROAS, all that stuff. Given that, and given the explosion we've seen in the number of companies in this rewarded, incentivized space, it must be working. It must be doing some good stuff.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, without a doubt, I mean, I know from my own experience speaking to and speaking to advertisers, this model works. There's a few things that you need to, you need to kind of take notice of, but, fundamentally it's a model that's actually not that difficult. I was talking about the barrier to entry. It's actually not that difficult to get it to work. I think the question is really scale from that point. So you've got it to work now. How much can I scale on this platform is probably the next question, which is a key consideration when you're a resource poor UA manager, time resource poor UA manager. Which platform do I invest in? Which is another reason that I built the database, just to give some indication about where the scale might be.
Yeah. And I mean, you can't imagine that 30 companies are going to win here, right? I mean, you got to imagine that more are going to come in because it's a hot space and things are happening here. And you got to imagine that many of these companies are doing well, but you can't imagine 30 are going to win. There's going to be some, 3 or 4, maybe 1 or 2, maybe 5 or 6. I don't know, that win the lion's share. And then there's going to be a long tail after that.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about the TAM for this, the total addressable market for this gift card space, I mean, it's the number of any users in any geography that are interested in playing games for rewards. I don't know, I don't know how big that space is. It doesn't seem to me like it's a huge business. I actually think TapJoy and Fiber and the virtual currency offer wall companies, they probably had a larger TAM. There was probably you could probably reach more users who were playing games, and you could kind of serve a virtual currency offer wall versus the gift card TAM. I think that's probably its biggest limitation is, and I don't think we know how big the TAM is. The other limitation is every one of these gift card apps relies on UA for user growth. They're acquiring users from Facebook, Google. They're actually just acquiring users from each other. You can go on their
arbitration play.
You can just see them like all advertising on each other. So I think it's interesting to see when incrementality as well becomes a consideration for user acquisition managers. Are the installs I'm buying incremental, or are they users I've already acquired before, or would I've got them anyway? Because they're basically at the bottom of the funnel. I think these are all good questions that we don't yet know the answers to. But I think when you say that there's going to be a lot of consolidation, I just don't see how there can't be. When you have all these platforms all trying to buy the same user, basically from the major channels. So, Facebook, Google, AppLovin, each other. Plus you have a cap on how many users are even interested in earning gift card rewards. I think the gift card space has its limits. I don't know where that is. So I am also interested to see what's the next reward type. We've done virtual currency. We've done, we're in the gift card space, airline miles, whatever the currency is, there's got to be something else, I think, that continues to grow the space. But I think the gift card or loan space is not, is limited. I mean, there's already implementations in a bunch of the cashback apps like Fetch Rewards as well, which is a big one in the US. So there's already a bunch of different type of implementations of the format, but I do think the gift card one may have it feeling.
It certainly may. And it'll be interesting as well. Like, this is a very specific space for gaming user acquisition. Is there a way for some of these players to pivot and get into the larger loyalty space, loyalty and retention space? Retail is one that we talk about a lot. And obviously that's a hot topic around AppLovin as well. Theoretically, AppLovin has come up with something that will make targeting in retail and UA in retail as successful as they've done it in the gaming space. So we'll see if that's the case. We'll see if there's some opportunity there. It'll certainly be interesting.
They already are. So some of the biggest, so if you look at the database, the two biggest, or several of the biggest networks already are in the e-com space. So Prodigy, And the other one would be Fetch Rewards that I mentioned, which doesn't operate its own network. It's powered by Adtech. But Prodigy's their biggest product is Swag, but most of their website is devoted to e-com. And same as Fetch. So if you look at Fetch Rewards app, most of the product is developed to e-com. The actual play areas of those products are limited, but my guess is they drive a significant to most of the revenue. I don't know. I don't have figures on that. The difference in how they operate versus what AppLovin's building, they don't need to build cutting edge algorithms like AppLovin to operate the e-com businesses that they do. So the problem AppLovin's solving right now is how do we identify a user who's likely to purchase from an ad format, and what product that they likely to purchase. The user is a fairly low intent user, and so you need very high levels of targeting to be able to find the right product for the right user. And when you look at, say, Prodigy or Fetch, and how they don't need to be great at targeting, they just give cash back on every purchase that you made. You know, it's a standard affiliate model. You don't necessarily need cutting it. You don't need any algorithm. You just give a search functionality to your users. These are coupon buyers. You know, just normal cash back. Honey extension, etc. You know, this is just standard cashback. So this model definitely can add e-com to it, and it already is. That's certainly one route that these networks have. I don't actually know. I don't remember how Prodigy started, but I think they probably started from the e-com space and they added the UA piece to it versus the other way around.
Yeah.
And I can see every one of the other providers trying to do that, because if you think about acquiring users, if you're only acquiring for the user acquisition, for the gaming piece, you're significantly limiting the types of creative and the audiences that you can target. If you add e-com to part of that, we're suddenly significantly broadening. Yeah,
it's
exactly.
Huge. It's huge.
The messages and the channels that you could potentially acquire users from. So I think that's a logical next step.
Absolutely. That might be a good segue, because one of the things I didn't mention off the top, but one of the things I mentioned to you before we started recording is maybe you're an Adtech OG and we can just have kind of a bit of a broad ranging conversation of where mobile ad tech is right now. As we're recording this, it's Thursday, December 19th. This is the last Growth Masterminds I'm recording in 2024. We're looking ahead at 2025, and we've seen tons of change already. And AppLovin has been big in that, huge in that, absolutely huge in that. And there's different reasons and ideas about why that is. And so I want to have that conversation, not just AppLovin, but Meta, Google, and some of the other big players and where you see things are moving. But it makes sense probably because it's come up a couple times on the AppLovin side. And if you go with Eric Soufer's understanding of why they've been so successful, there's kind of two things, right? On the one hand, they've discovered that, hey, the best way to target high value gamers in another game is to find them in game A, right? And the players who are likely to play game B are in game A. Excellent. That's good targeting. There we go. And they're likely to be able to replicate that success, or they think they can. Early returns are interesting, at least in the retail space. So that's his explanation there. What's your explanation
for why AppLovin's been so successful?
Yes, and why their stock market valuation has just skyrocketed.
I mean, they've been successful in gaming because they basically gangstered their way to owning the supply side. That's it.
And so they have insight into how people value their users, essentially what they're bidding. And so then they see all that information, and that gives them great information on the other side of the market.
Exactly. I mean, there's a couple of things they've done. I mean, one, acquiring Max, which was a good acquisition, but I don't think it was a fully formed product. When they bought it, they continued to iterate on it over time in a very good way. And then their acquisition of Mopub, which was just a next level acquisition. They took the largest mediation provider outside Google in mobile out of the market, paid every publisher to move over to Max. They were just highly aggressive. At that time, we weren't even in the bidding for that. We weren't even in the bidding for MoPub at that time. The fact that they managed to take that out of the market and buy all the customers, they bought the tech, didn't buy all the customers, and just persuaded them to move over was a genius move. And mobile was always about the supply side. Once you own the supply side, you had all the data and you could make all the calls. And then I think to the e-com piece, they've just, they've innovated in their models, they've done testing, and they've clearly found that for some segment of e-com advertisers, they're able to actually, as I was saying earlier, they've been able to match the right product with the right user. How the market has reacted to that is kind of crazy. I don't think it legitimate that, I think you could certainly legitimize the continued growth they've seen in gaming. I don't know whether there's proof that the e-com stuff scaled quite to 800 or 700%. I think they are year to date increase in stock price. I think they have the mobile piece sewn up. I think the mobile gaming piece sewn up. The e-com stuff, I think is still TBD, but they're resourcing it well. We'll see, I guess.
It is interesting to see that owning both sides of the market is kind of the thing that the antitrust people are on Google for, right?
Yeah.
So many pieces of the market that you see all the data, you know where you can bid, how much you can extract, all that stuff, right? We'll see where that goes.
Yeah, the difference is they're not like $1 trillion company.
Yes, exactly.
$3 trillion company. AppLovin, it was always, AppNetworks always tried to own both sides of the market. The benefit that AppLovin have done is they've got all the buyers to buy into their sell side piece. And so, I don't think they're going to have any issues with any legislation. They're not big enough.
No, they're not at that size yet. Absolutely. And we know the legislators are a decade behind the industry, right? And then there is everything set up in lawsuits. Okay, let's go to the broader picture here. Let's think about Meta. Let's think about Google, the broader TikTok, other things like that. One of the changes that we've definitely seen in 2024 is everybody is doing modeling, whether it's AEM or TikTok has their version, Google has their version. Everybody is doing some form of probabilistic and modeling to say, hey, this is what we do. This is what we achieve. Here's our results. And it's kind of an end run around ATT. What else you see changing?
Yeah, it seems like ATT is dead, fingerprinting back. I don't know. It seems like, everyone's using IP address. It seems bizarre that there was a period of time where it seemed like ATT would be evolved on and would be the solution. I don't know. We keep waiting for more news from Apple around what they think about fingerprinting, but you can see why everyone wants to release their own measurement, because Apple's doesn't seem to want it to be the solution that everyone uses. I think mobile advertising is just one use case for IP address. There are many other use cases that I don't think Apple well considered when they were considering when they actually launched ATT, and then they realized everyone else who uses IP address in the app ecosystem for location and fraud and things like that. So, I think one of the hot spaces is going to be measurement on top of those solutions. They all have their own way of measuring their success and optimizing how you then determine what actually is the source of truth above those.
Exactly. Every one of them has a big incentive to say, yes, we're super successful. Yes, and to their credit so far, most of those solutions have not looked egregiously bad at that.
Yeah. They also have an incentive not to over report too much, because then you lose trust in the platform. But those companies will all continue TikTok, Google, Meta will continue to invest in AI, get better at targeting over the next year. It's going to be interesting to see how they create new inventory sources They're all I think, 2025 is going to continue to be the year of AI. The question is like, how do they, I think, continue to grow their inventory? I thought 2 years ago, I thought Google was capped out, but now with AI where it is, I think there's just whole new areas of inventory that they could potentially unlock. There's more user engagement that they could potentially monetize there. And same with Facebook. TikTok, I'm less sure of, but for sure those two, they can basically almost make their own inventory at this point. And that's O&O inventory, not, which is, super interesting.
Yes, which is the best kind of inventory because you have first party data on the entire suite there. It is interesting to me if we look at that and think about that, right? Because if we think about Google, for instance, we do see, like, I use ChatGPT search probably for 95% of my searches right now. Right. And that was a paid product. I still subscribe to that, but that's now available for free. Right. So we're going to see an ad model there. Perplexity AI does the same thing. And they've been working on their ad model for quite some time. So we're going to see some interesting things there. Of course, Google is.
Twitter might suddenly become the platform that it's always threatened to be as well in terms of, so Grok went free, I think it was last week.
Yes, it did. And lots of people who paid for it, like $500, were a little annoyed.
But, Twitter's had an eternal problem of being able to monetize. If you've spent any time on Twitter, their ads are terrible. They have no targeting. It could be super interesting to see where Grok could take them in the same vein as ChatGPT. I am the same. I use it habitually. But Grok may suddenly open up a whole new world of performance advertising for Twitter that they just never had before.
We'll see what happens. I have no real clue there, but last I heard, Elon and advertisers weren't really on the same side. So there's something about going like this.
I would say that's brand advertisers. I mean, brand advertisers can take their dollars away from you easily because they're buying eyeballs. They're not buying performance. The benefit of the performance model is it's very, very hard for any advertiser to walk away from a
absolutely. If you get performance, you'll stay, even if you're mistreated. I 100% agree because you just have to, because that's what you need. So where I was going is, it is interesting. We'll see, but Google has tons of owned and operated inventory, obviously YouTube, many other properties as well. But search has always been kind of the core thing right there, driving most of the value. How will that evolve as AI invades search? And of course, Google has its own Gemini, and we'll see what happens there as well. So and that looks amazing. Also, it's different on a Meta level, right? Meta has insane amounts of inventory, which is not as low funnel, right? Because you're talking Instagram, you're talking Facebook. They've been able to manufacture more inventory, to your point, with Reels, right?
Yep.
Which has been impressive. I kind of feel like it's done at the cost of the social graph a little bit, because essentially, if you have the eyeballs, you can create an algorithmic thing and do a TikTok, right? Which is what Reels essentially is. But is it at the cost of annoying people who came to Facebook to see people that they know? So we'll see how that goes and where that goes. But obviously, they've been incredibly successful at that. Any other thoughts?
On Google, AI provides a solution where you don't have to send people to a different website.
Well, Google's been working hard on that for years now, right?
Exactly. Well, so the best example is Yelp and the lawsuit that they've had, or the complaints that they've had against Google for a while. But suddenly, you basically have all the content on your property, which is amazing. You don't need to kick people out, and you can monetize that even better than you were before. So I think that, as long as they can be one of the most relevant ways that you search, they can continue to grow. I think Meta, for me, probably the more interesting one is WhatsApp and how they could potentially use. I'm European, so I'm a big WhatsApp user, but it's a completely under-monetized product. That I spend all day in WhatsApp. Wow. And the idea that they can suddenly add AI there, where instead of me going to ChatGPT, why don't I just use WhatsApp and they return the same information? There's no need for me to continue to fire up ChatGPT when my WhatsApp chat does the same thing. I can ask it questions within chat time when I'm speaking to people. I think Meta is very well positioned as well.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And they've made huge investments in AI. Obviously, I have so far resisted those requests in Messenger and in Facebook and in WhatsApp to try and make a cool image or to ask a question or other things like that. But yes, that is there, and people will use what's in front of them. So that'll
Exactly.
be interesting. Any other thoughts on the ad tech space as we go into 2025? Anything you're seeing, noticing, thinking?
No, I think, yeah, I mean, the applications of AI and the rewarded space are my two main kind of trends right now. And then I think also measurement. I think the issue on the measurement side is just a lack of standards, basically.
Mm-hmm.
That's the issue that I see
Mm-hmm.
on the measurement side. There's just a lack of agreement on what standards any business should apply to it. It's really difficult for third parties to gain traction here because you have to have the company that you're selling to buy into your standards, and they may not do that. They may already have their internal models, their internal standards, their internal goals, etc., etc. And I think that's the key issue for measurement. I think there's a ton of measurement companies out there doing MMM, incrementality. The issue that I see is it's a very custom sort of service to be offering, unless you can get lots of companies to buy into the same standard as you have. I know this because I did it at Albion. If we were doing LTV modeling and like trying to educate every different buyer on how to understand LTV predictions, et cetera, it's just really, really tough.
It is.
So I think measurement will continue. I mean, obviously, it will continue to evolve. I think it's a very interesting space from a third party point of view, but I think it's a really tough space.
It is a really tough space. It is a super interesting space. I'm going to give like the singular almost commercial here for a second on unified measurement, which is actually a really cool response to exactly what you're talking about, which is saying, hey, you kind of need a number which may not be the truth, but is truthy, right? And you kind of go from that, and you want that to be accurate enough, and it actually has gotten accurate enough that you can be pretty confident that there's where you go. But you also want to be able to see what goes into that number. What are your results just from your measurement analytics engine? What are your results? What is Meta saying that it's getting? What is Scan saying that it's getting? So I'm talking iOS in this case right now. What are we seeing from other measurement methodologies? So I can look at that and I get different lenses on reality. I think that's really, really cool. MMM is challenging and tough. It can be done, especially with a measurement company that has all your data and has historical data for multiple years already and can basically turn it on out of the box, but it's still not as easy. And incrementality is super interesting. And there are ways of doing that interestingly and pretty well, especially with a measurement company that has all your data. And finding out some good stuff there also. So it is an interesting evolving space. It is going to change significantly in 2025. And I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I think the other issue on the measurement space is it's a very attractive space. If the company is large enough that's kind of, doing the marketing, they tend to have data science team who are very interested in this problem. And so often they'll just want the raw data and they'll want to build their own model. I think that's the other issue of this space. So, we had this at Albion where, to be a big enough company for it to make sense for them to pay for this enhanced measurement, I guess you could call it, they likely have a data scientist, well, at least one who's interested in measurement and potentially might want to build their own models. And if they're too small, they can't afford the solution. So
exactly.
It's a tough sell.
The good thing is that AI is coming in here as well, which is going to be awesome. I may have lost you. You seem to be frozen, but I'll talk for a bit. Maybe you'll come back. The good thing is that AI is coming in to help here as well. Because, I mean, let's face it, so much of what data scientists do is they're essentially data janitors. There's a lot more to it as well. But there's going to be a lot evolving there. Paul, do I still have you?
Sorry, my internet dropped. I'm here.
I may have lost Paul.
I'm
In any case, this has been super fun, Paul. I've really enjoyed hearing what you've had to say, what you've shared about everything. And I hope you have a wonderful bit of a break and a wonderful 2025.